Hello, everyone. I am so happy that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much for being part of Crucial Conversations on Cognitive Diversity. My name is Maria Kennedy, and I have the honor of hosting our amazing guest and asking her your questions. So please put your questions in the Q&A by clicking on it at the bottom of your screen, and share any of the questions that you have for the founder and president of With Understanding Comes Calm. So please also notice that there's a chat feature, and I would love for you to share your own personal experiences about today's topic, which is parenting, adulting, and being a 2E adult, right? So your input, your insights are going to be really valuable, and they're going to make today's conversation so much better. So please share them with us. So also you will notice at the bottom of your screen, CC, which means closed captioned. So if you would like the text of what's being said, please click the CC and that will pop up for you. So we have a really short time today. Okay, so get those questions in as quick as you can. Thank you so much for completing the questionnaire, our poll at the beginning. We're just trying to get an idea of who's joining us, okay? And then we'll ask you an exit questionnaire at the end, and that's going to help us make season 4 even more exciting. All right, so without further ado, let's start. If you don't know me, if this is your very first time, an excruciatingly huge welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'll learn an awful lot and be really engaged in today's conversation. My name is Maria Kennedy. I am a very, very proud mom of a gifted young man. I'm an educator and a writer, and I talk funny. That's because I'm from England. I'm from a very, very cold, wet place, which is really funny because now I live in the beautiful place called California, where it hardly ever rains. Today with me, I have the most amazing woman. I think that we should all be like her. She does so many things. She is so talented. And I am just honored that she's taking the time today to join us. I know that we're all going to learn an awful lot from her. And so before I introduce her, let me tell you just a few things about her. So Julie Skolnick, MA, JD, founder and president of With Understanding Comes Calm, LLC, passionately guides. Yes, she most definitely does. Parents and gifted and distractible children, mentors 2E adults, trains educators, and advises professionals on how to bring out the best and raise self-confidence in their 2E students and clients. Julie serves as secretary to the Maryland Superintendent's Gifted and Talented Advisory Council, is an advisor for the Masters of Education program for the Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity, is the Maryland liaison for supporting the emotional needs of the gifted, aka SENG, is a committee member of the National Association for Gifted Children, and serves as advisor to the G-Word feature documentary currently in production. Julie produces Let's Talk 2E virtual conferences, hosts the Let's Talk 2E Parent Empowerment Series, maintains the free listing service 2eresources.com, and publishes Gifted and Distractible, a free monthly newsletter. A frequent speaker and prolific writer, Julie is also the mother of 3 twice exceptional children who keep her on her toes and uproariously laughing. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce today's esteemed guest, founder and president of With Understanding Comes Calm, Julie Skolnick.
Thank
Julie,
you,
let me just say a huge thank you for making time to engage in conversation with us today.
I'm so excited to do this and to spend time with you. And I don't think your accent is funny. I love it. In fact, my ways I have set to the British guy. So I could listen to you all day long.
Anytime, come hang out. Let's chat together.
All right. All right. I'm really excited to be here, guys. And these are crucial conversations, and especially talking about the strength-based approach. I actually already see a question, and I love that question. Maria, can I say something about that awesome question? So you heard Maria read my bio, which the most important part was that I raised these 3 awesome 2E kids. And so you're asking, the question for people who can't see it is that in this pandemic time, which would you say is our main subject to work out with an 8 to 9-year-old? So one of the things Maria said is that I help people bring out the best and raise self-confidence in their 2E kids, clients, and selves if you're a 2E adult. And that is the most important thing. Way more important than any academics, way more important than how they're doing on the test or what they're learning or how the slide or any of those other anxiety provoking questions. It's really helping them to love themselves, their authentic selves, who they are. And that's really kind of the premise for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. So can I kick off with the title for your LLC? I just love it. With understanding comes calm. Julie, how did you come up with that? We're all so stressed. And as you mentioned, there's so much pressure on 2E students to conform, to fit into that box. And understanding really makes a difference.
Yeah.
So what led you to that?
So I will tell you that, and then I will also tell you that when I started 8 years ago, and I would tell people my business name, I always knew who needed it, who needed my support or guidance, because I would say I'm the owner of With Understanding Comes Calm, and every single time, Maria, they would go, oh, like that. Oh, I want some of that, So there's actually a story, obviously, behind the name. So I was talking with a very good friend and colleague, and I was talking about my middle guy, who's now 18, but at the time he was probably, I don't know, 7. And there was some drama at school. There was some person who didn't understand him. There was some necessary advocating that had to happen. And I worked through what the issue was and figured it out through talking with him, not assuming, not judging, not, thinking, why can't you just? But I took the time to be a detective and to figure out and ask him questions about what was going on. And I was talking to my friend and I explained this whole process and I went, with understanding comes calm. And then I was like, I was on the verge of starting my business and I thought, that is the name. That's going to be the name, because that's the gold standard. I can't tell you how many times clients will look at me and go, with understanding comes calm. I know. Yeah, so that's how it came out of my own experience and realizing that understanding, feeling understood, the action of actually taking the time to understand, it feels good for everybody. Whether you're an adult and you realize your spouse gets you, whether you're a student and your teacher gets you, whether you're a teacher and you get your student, right? Like it's just so important to feel understood and to let somebody know that you do understand them.
That's so perfect. And Julie, you are definitely the gold standard. We love you so much. So, Julie, you're a parent. You've raised 3 amazing humans. It's so brilliant. For parents out there, because I know they struggle an awful lot, particularly with trying to decide what's the right thing. how to handle situations with their children. I mean, my own experience is that his teachers didn't get him. Now, if you're not a confident parent, how do you do that? How do you raise a well-balanced human? What can parents do to really understand the way their children think and, as a consequence, how they behave?
So, it's a great question, and we have to back up for a second and take stock of who all the players are, right? So you've got a gifted and 2E kid, which means one or both parents are gifted or 2E. Even if you've adopted a child and they're gifted or 2E, it's really probable that you are too. I mean, we are attracted to each other, right?
Yes.
Teachers who teach gifted in 2E very often are 2E. Psychologists, when I present to them, you see the thought bubbles going out. Oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, that's my spouse. Oh my God, that's my child, my parent. So first we have to recognize what we're dealing with. And so how do you raise a balanced kid, I believe, is the bottom line question, Maria, what you're asking. And it dovetails a little bit with the question that's in our Q&A here, where they're asking about, what about when family members aren't in agreement about validity of what's being taught, right? Like you're coddling, he just needs more discipline. You have to set more structure. You have to, all of those things. Okay, so first of all, there is no you have to's. It's you are operating as you. So first understanding has to be to understand yourself as the parent and to love yourself as the parent, to look yourself in the mirror and say, I worked really hard today, and to give yourself credit and sort of that high five for all the work that you're doing, because you're working hard. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. Okay, so that's number one, is understanding yourself and what are your strengths and what are your challenges. I mean, today I met with 2 couples and 2 adults clients that I was supporting, and they all see what's happening for their child in them. And parents tend to respond in like one of 2 ways. One, oh my God, I have to make sure they don't have the same challenges I have. Or 2, everybody in the world stinks and I don't care what they say about my kid, right? And neither is really the ideal way to respond. Though, putting your kid on as the right one and the world not would be, if I had to choose, the one I would choose. So how do we bring out the best and raise self-confidence in our kids? The first thing is you really have to understand what gifted means. And this goes to your question, person who's asking about what happens if people don't agree, family members don't agree. And that happens a lot. I would have to say, if I had to tell you, out of all my clients, adult and kids, I would say probably 95% of the time there's pushback from family, extended family. Because they were brought up in the time when you did what you did and you said what you said, and that's what you did because parents said so. The end. Do it because I said so. That doesn't fly with gifted and 2E kids, and we don't really want it to fly with gifted or 2E kids. So there's a lot of, there's so many strategies that I work on with parents, but I guess some of the questions you have to ask yourself are, if this behavior was happening and the person was a grown-up, right? Like if the pushback and the questioning and the doubting and the needing to prove it for yourself was happening, we would value that in an adult, right? That's the doctor I want. I want the doctor who's going to push back and question and think and be out of the box. And so that's one quick way. I teach and have trademarked an acronym called PRAISE. Now, PRAISE gets a lot of negative attention because people think, oh, like that, I hate to call it up, a jamboree kind of thing over here on the East Coast where everything's great. Oh, you did this. Oh, you win an award. Oh, you get a trophy. Oh, so that's not what I'm talking about. PRAISE stands for, so there's 6 letters in PRAISE. So there's 6 categories of strategies that I teach. The first is P, praise, personal connection. Everything stems from personal connection. That is the A1 number 1 thing. So if you are butting heads with your kid, back up. Stop talking about homework. Stop talking about clearing the dishes. Stop talking about throwing their laundry. Get a personal connection. Dedicate yourself to 15 minutes a week to just having specific time with your child. Of course, I would prefer more, but just There's no teaching, there's no judging. So that is the first thing, is personal connection. And then I teach the other 5 categories, which obviously we don't have time to go into, but I'm going to tell you what they are. So the next one is reframe. You got to reframe how you're looking at this. They are not trying to be difficult. As Ross Greene says, kids would do well if they could. That is absolutely true. So reframe, what's going on for this kid? Ask questions, don't make assumptions. Personal connection, reframe, anticipate. People, time and time and time again, the same thing happens. I can't understand it. He'll never, whatever. Remember his shoes, sit at the table, bring in his homework. Okay, so you have to mix it up. You can anticipate these challenges. It's hard for him to get off of a screen. Oh my God, it's terrible. We've got to change how we're responding. We've got to talk to them and be really meta about it. Okay, so you can anticipate, and then we got to figure out the strategies that we do anticipating that behavior. Then personal connection, reframe, anticipate, incentives and choices. Choices are magical. Sense of humor. We need to have a sense of humor and exercise. So those are the 6. I mean, that was like a lot of stuff, but also just a little scratch of the surface. I hope that answered your question. There's so much to say, Maria.
So much to say, I know. Julie, the second point is reframe. And I know from personal experience of not doing a good job of reframing that we all need help in that department. Could you give us maybe 1 or 2 examples of reframing?
I'm going to give you an example from my very first client ever. So this is like 2014. She had a 14-year-old son, and we were working together in one of our sessions, and she said, "Oh, you will not believe what happened. This child ran out of the classroom, 14, left the classroom, elopement, everybody's freaking out, and the head of school was like, if we can't get this kid under control, and the learning specialist, I don't know what to do." And I looked at this client and I said, when you go home, I want you to give your son a high five. And she looked at me and she was like, "He left the classroom. Everybody was pissed off." I said, "Yeah, but he knew what he needed. He needed to remove himself for whatever reason, and we don't know why, but he didn't hurt anyone, break anything, cause a problem, wasn't disrespectful. Yeah, we got to figure out a better way for him to be able to leave the environment and have a safe place to go and somebody to talk to. But he absolutely knew what he needed in that moment, and he took care of himself." Right? That's a reframe. Does that help?
That definitely helps. Definitely helps. I think that one's brilliant.
I mean, there's so many moments that our kids do something and we make an assumption. Oh my God, they're manipulating me. They're doing that on purpose. They're doing that just to piss me off because they know that it makes me crazy. No, that's not what's happening. 2E kids, as the fabulous Susan Baum has taught me, are redirected 40 times more than neurotypical kids. And they don't want another redirection. They want to know how to succeed. And something is bothering them that we can't perceive. It's an invisible disability. Something's happening. And we have to become detectives, and we have to understand and uncover what's going on for them.
I love that. So we need to stop and we need to understand.
We're very linear. We are goal driven. We are action item checklist driven, and we want to get from A to B. And sometimes, our kids are never going to be linear. We need to just stop. It doesn't always work, guys. I promise you. I know you're like, "Oh my God, Julie, this sounds great, but how can I actually implement it?" Right? And that's the hard question. And it goes back to that personal relationship. And there's actually a sort of Julie Skolnick strategy I've never really heard before. I'm going to tell you it here now. And it's called noticing verbs, like action words. As a antidote to the redirections, what I teach my clients to do is to notice verbs. So instead of saying, "Hey, thank you for emptying the dishwasher," or "Thank you for putting your shoes in the closet," instead, I'm going to notice what they did. I'm going to say, "Hey, I noticed you put your shoes in the closet and your lunch is on the island and you sat right down to get to your homework. And I'm not going to say thank you. And I'm not going to say I'm proud of you, because that's external motivation. I want this child to know that I noticed what he did just because he did it. And it's sort of it's a nuanced strategy, but actually I had a client today, which was beautiful. And she said to me, you know what I do? Instead of saying, I noticed you did blah, 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 she says, you did blah, blah, blah. I noticed, because I want him to know that I'm focusing on the fact that I noticed that he did something, which is the opposite of noticing you didn't do something. Try this at home. I'll tell you what, your kid's going to say thank you. It's really weird, but they do.
Nice. So we're looking for the good, very much like looking for the strengths. So what are we doing right? So let's focus on that. Yeah, instead of the no and all the things that we're not doing, which is what traditionally our students are identified for, what all the things they can't do.
And by the way, grown-ups, too, we adults, you too. We have to give ourselves permission to be friends with ourselves, to see ourselves, to enjoy our authentic selves, and to focus on who we are and our differences and how great they are, because they are what make us who we are. The same thing for kids.
Cool. We have a question in the Q&A. So it says, we parents feel understood by some teachers, but don't know how to help our daughter, 14 years, as she's perfectly masked and does not like to be treated different. It is more like, I know I'm different, gifted dyslexic, but don't want to seem
awkward, maybe
awkward on top of that.
Yeah. So great question. Thank you for including that question. She is masking to fit in. And this leads me to two places. Number one, for our gifted kids and our grown-up gifted and TUI selves, interest peers are so much more important than age peers.
Right.
So let me say that again. Interest peers are way more important than age peers. So if your 4-year-old is, loving talking to a neighbor or a friend who's much older, that's okay. It allows them to be their authentic self when they're with an interest peer, if they're talking physics or black holes or gardening or whatever it is, sharks, whatever it is. So that's number one. So I don't know who this child's friends are, but I'd want her to spend a lot of time in her interest area and passion area. And I want you to encourage that and be able to take her wherever that leads you as far as activities are concerned, so that she can be with people when she doesn't have to mask herself. Okay, and the way to do that is not to look for gifted dyslexics necessarily, but for people who like to do the things she likes to do, who like to learn the things that she likes to do. Okay, and then, it's really about keeping yourself, for a 14-year-old, from saying, just be yourself. Like, that's probably what you want to say, and maybe you've said a couple times. And by the way, remember, what you've done that hasn't worked before is not going to work now, so you can stop doing it. But it's
guilty as charged.
All of us, of course, we have like our lane that we live in, and it takes a lot of energy, guys, to do what I'm suggesting. And it already takes a lot of energy to be us, and it takes a lot of energy to raise these kids or teach these kids or be that adult. So the important thing is to make sure that teachers know what her interest is, that, coaches know what her interest is, that relatives know, so that they can start the conversation and help open the door for her to be her authentic self.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I love this. One of our audience wants to know whether or not your own kids are available to provide service, lived experience, peer group support, thus carrying on your business as they would prefer.
Well, so my kids are 20, 18, and 12, all very different. Most people talk about my middle guy, who's 18, as my muse. He used to self-define as ADHD. Is profoundly gifted, has had quite an experience and a journey in his own life. I actually gave a keynote with his permission for the Colorado Association for Gifted on his life. And truth be told, he's at a really cool boarding school where he has become a leader and is really kind of helping the next generation. So are they necessarily available? Maybe not, but maybe in a few years they'll take up mom's torch. We'll see. But they definitely, let me tell you something, a really great strategy that I used to use with my kids, I still use with my kids, is I would say, you know, I need to read this article. It would be about something I thought they needed to know. And I'd say, I need to read this article. Could you preview it for me and let me know what you think? Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep. And you make up stories. You know something's going on with them, some social situation. You make up a story that something parallel is happening in your life, and you ask them for advice. What would you do? It starts them thinking, but it makes it less personal for them.
That is fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much. We have a question about IEPs, and I'm not sure if this is your wheelhouse, but the question says, how do you prevent an IEP from being discontinued because it wasn't serviced due to the pandemic, thus implicating it isn't needed? We just want to continue to follow more time and figure out what's really needed to reconstructing the IEP.
So, so funny you say, is that in my wheelhouse? So I used to attend IEP meetings. It was my least favorite thing on the planet to do because IEP meetings are weird. Like, it depends on I live in Maryland and I have clients all over the world, but sometimes I would go in person to Virginia, and in Virginia, there's actually a drop-down menu in an IEP, like our kids are drop-down menus. It made me crazy.
Oh, wow.
So first of all, don't sign anything until you agree to it. Okay. Secondly, let's back up and talk about the goals, guys. Sitting at the table, it's not as black and white. It's so funny how much we want our kids not to be black and white, how much we try so hard and everything to be black and white, right? Like IEP bad, IEP good, IEP wrong, IEP right. So there are different states that have different rules, and even probably different districts that have different rules about IEPs and during the pandemic. And there's all sorts of stuff that I actually outsourced to an IEP professional. But what I can tell you is this: I'm much more about the now what. Like, what are we going to, because you can have the best IEP on the planet. It can be beautifully written with the most fabulous goals and accommodations. And if nobody knows how to implement them, it doesn't matter. So you really have to be about the now what. Stop, get out of those weeds, think about, okay, what are the goals? What are the accommodations that are going to help us reach those goals? Who's in charge of implementing those accommodations? And what are the measurables to see if change is being made? That's really where you want to be and have that conversation. Identify a quarterback in your school. I think that's another very important strategy. Identify who's the quarterback who gets your kid, who understands your kid, who loves your kid. And that's going to be your sounding board for how to get things done and to really kind of figure out who you need to talk to get done what you need to get done. Because if you are going to die on the hill of having an IEP and they're going to be resisting it, and you're spending your time doing something that's just delaying what's really needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Another question we have: my son is already an adult. He's struggling in his life socially and keeping some order. Now at 27, he has no job, no friends, and does not know how to start having a life after the pandemic. Understanding his special will help him with a question mark. So how are we going to do that?
So thank you for that question. You're so frustrated and you see so much potential in your child and you can't believe that you're where you are when he was little and brilliant and things came easily. I know. I hear you, I see you, I feel you. It is a lot of work. And at 27 as an adult, it's hard. So that's a great question. And I would love to help you. Doing so in a situation like this, in a scenario like this, is very, very hard. But I will tell you that it's extraordinarily important to work on that personal connection, let go of all agenda, because you wake up every morning and you have a checklist and an agenda and you want him to get this, that, and the other thing done. I know it. But what has to happen for some time is to work on that personal connection and relationship, and to validate how he's feeling and what's going on for him. And then, frankly, it's time to outsource. We need a really good therapist. We need to figure out what are the learning differences and learning disabilities and what's keeping him from being able to get or stay in a job. So there's a lot of work that has to be done that he has to do. You can't really do for him. And it is super hard to watch that train coming down the track and know that it might crash. And that's where we are. There's only so much you can do, and you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself. If he's living with you, and you've got to make sure you're doing what you need to do to live your life and fill your cup. I talk about a bucket of resilience. There are things that fill our bucket of resilience and things that empty our bucket of resilience. Take stock. What are the things that fill yours? What are the things that empty yours? What are the things that fill his? What are the things that empty his? And letting him answer those questions and be a part of the process. And he has to want to.
Awesome.
I'm just going to mention, Maria, because I know people are like, there's so many questions and it's hard in this venue to go deep. I offer a free 20-minute phone consultation to anybody who's interested, and you can schedule it. And I do know it's being scheduled already in January because I do them on Fridays, but you can go to julieskolnick.youcanbook.me. I think it's in the links probably that have been already put in, but Julie, Julie, Skolnick, SKOLNICK.youcanbook.me, and you can book a time.
So we're typing that straight in the chat right there, so you can copy that. And it will also be on the information that you can get when you, the recording of this will be sent out to everybody that's registered, and on our site will be all of the resources that Julie has available. Okay, so if you don't get it typed time, you will still have access to it. Talking of which, Julie, there are just so many things that you do, right? And you are my hero. I just think you're so amazing. But you, so you have conferences for parents, for teachers, and for 2E adults. I love the fact that there's a track for all of these people because their needs are different. So could you tell us a little bit about what you have coming up and how they can access it?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's a zillion free things on my website, withunderstandingcomescalm.com. So that's the main site, and any other URL you hear today, you can go to withunderstandingcomescalm.com and find it. But so there's a free newsletter called Gifted and Distractible, and that comes out monthly. In fact, I think it's coming out almost right now, I think, today. And you can subscribe on the website. There's tons of, I don't have a podcast, but I'm a guest on a lot of podcasts. So there's a lot of podcasts up there that you can listen to from a lot of really awesome people in the field. So With Understanding Comes Calm is my consulting and my speaking business. And then I have what's called Let's Talk 2E, and that's conferences and communities. So I do parent empowerment groups. I'm probably going to start some adult groups. You should know that there are attendant Facebook pages for every stakeholder. So there's a Let's Talk 2E Parents, a Let's Talk 2E Teachers Lounge, and Let's Talk 2E Adults. And people from all over the world are in there. So it's really awesome to find interest peers within your stakeholder group. Conferences, I've been producing conferences since 2018. And they are all on demand and on my website. So there are some for parents, there are some for teachers with credits even from our wonderful Bridges graduate program. And last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, I launched the very first ever conference for 2E adults. We have over 700 people in our Facebook page, and it is amazing the amount of interaction that's happening. So all of those things are always on demand. Here's a secret. We're going to have a Cyber Monday sale, and we're going to go back to the early bird price for the adult conference. So if you're interested in that, Cyber Monday, just be on my newsletter list, subscribe on the website, and you'll get that information. Maria mentioned at the beginning that I also host 2eresources.com, which is a free 24/7 listing service where it's free for you all to come and look and browse. Our resources are listed in 5 categories: education, clinicians, consultants, associations, and enrichment. You can find all sorts of resources there. If you know of a resource that should be listed there, please let us know. We are growing that. There's tons of videos, and I write a blog every month. This month's blog that comes out today is, I think it's 2E Adults, the Things We Do for Love. But I write about all different stakeholders. So you can go to the site actually, and you can search your terms. So if you want to search ADHD, or you want to search overexcitability or emotion regulation, you can search that and find all sorts of relevant stuff.
That's phenomenal, Julie. The stuff that you have available is just amazing. So everybody really does need to check out With Understanding Comes Calm. There's just a wealth of resources. I'm just going to pop back to a couple more questions that we have. One of our viewers says that my son is PG and 19 and struggling with managing his part-time job and college classes. How can we help him when he won't admit that he's struggling, and colleges won't let parents intervene or insist on an evaluation or counseling, etc.?
Great question.
We
so,
know.
Yeah, number 1 is stop telling and start asking. How is that going for you? Tell me about your day. How did you, oh, you did that. Oh, you have that. What's the plan? How are you planning to handle that? And if he doesn't want to share, it's really kind of huge. Like, I'm making this very light, but it's actually huge to pivot from telling a kid what to do to asking a kid how he's doing something. That's a big deal. And he's 19, so it's time. The other thing is, just like I talked about before, finding a quarterback at school for younger kids. Who is in this kid's orbit, who he trusts, who you can feed stuff to so that they can be the one to bring it up, and they're going to listen better. I mean, that's the secret, to outsource to the person that this kid trusts. And I think the school is actually right. And you could reach out to the school, to his dean, and say, I have these concerns. I want you to know that I have these concerns. We're going to be hands off. I have to tell you, early in my kids' education career, decided that I was going to divorce myself from homework. Every time I've said that to a teacher's like, thank God. Because otherwise we can't create agency in our kids. What do we want? We want our kids to be able to figure out how to do these things. So we ask questions without judgment, just like, well, how are you going to fit that in? Like, what's your plan? Sort of thing. Maria, there's one thing I forgot to mention that I did want to mention for parents of younger kids, if I could, real quick. Yes, on the website, so one of the things that I do during sessions with clients is I might talk to them about how to talk to their kids about being gifted in 2E. And I once had a client, I learned the greatest stuff from my clients. I had a client who said, oh my God, Julie, you have to record that. That's something everybody needs to know. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll record it. So if you go to my website and you go to work with me and you go on the parent page, and actually it's on the adult page too, I actually am talking, I say to parents, listen, watch this video, decide if you want to share it with your kids, but this is a great way to talk to your kids about being gifted or 2E. And I go through and it's fun. My dog has a little cameo that wasn't planned. And it's a really fun way to understand how you affect the world as a gifted 2E person and how the world affects you as a gifted 2E person. So check that out.
Nice. So do you see any 2E kids who are most interested in socializing at 14, even though she's not successful in keeping friends? She's given up other interests for the socializing.
This is the greatest irony of 2E kids. And I can tell you that my own kids struggle with this social success, right? Like, on the one hand, we don't like small talk and we need things to be relatable and meaningful, and we have a strong sense of right and wrong and justice, and so that can get in the way. We might have sensory things that we need to attend to, but I swear to you, most 2E kids, what they really want is meaningful connections with other interest peers. And it is the hardest thing for most of them to do successfully. So yes, is the quick and dirty answer to that question. Yes, of course, I do definitely see that. And it's like they bang their heads against the wall, trying so hard to fit in, trying so hard to be understood and to have friends, and not understanding how they screw up over and over and over again. So again, interest peers, that's what you're looking for. And note that executive functioning is absolutely necessary for social success. And our kids don't do executive functioning very well. So it's learning, being meta, understanding the different steps and the perspectives, and doing bibliotherapy by reading books and having conversations about, how do you think that character felt? Why do you think they said that? What would you have said? If you were them and you could rewind and go back in time, what would you say? Like, having those conversations outside of the context of, I can't believe you said that to Sally. She must have been mad, right? Like, because you're like, are you kidding? You said that again, like, how could you possibly? I don't understand. I keep telling you. But that doesn't resonate. They don't learn that way. It has to be not personal, and it has to be sort of in this intellectual way almost, of really kind of deep diving and not personal, because so often they feel like they do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing.
Most definitely. So we have a question that says, how do we assess TUI kids academically, knowing that even if they know the answer, if they don't want to answer it now, they just won't answer?
So the mode of assessment isn't appropriate. We need to change up the assessment. We don't need to bribe, cajole, threaten to get the kid to do what the grown-up wants, which unfortunately tends to be the first line of offense.
Yeah.
So it's really, the assessment is different. And again, do it in a different context. Do it in, we need to let them show what they know in the way that they love, whether it's, through a PowerPoint or an art project, or, I'll just throw out there, if you haven't seen TUI Twice Exceptional by Tom Rokolewski, that's a great movie that talks about one character who was unable to write, and many of our kids have written expression challenges and maybe dysgraphia as well. And she was allowed to hand in her assignments in cartoon work. And by the end of her high school career, she was writing pages. Most people say, well, in order to learn to write, you have to write. You have to keep practicing writing. But really what writing is executive functioning and organizing your thoughts. And so so many people say, well, you can do the PowerPoint after you write, but actually it should be the other way around. Do the cool stuff first. I have this conversation all the time with clients about how trying to do harder work first because you're more focused, wrong. Do the stuff you love, grease the wheels. In fact, I have parents whose kids maybe refusing to eat, may have a hard time eating, and so I say, you know what? Give them dessert first. Let's see what happens, right? The other ways aren't working. This is anticipating. We know mealtime's going to be hard. They're refusing to eat the stuff. So you know what? You don't get your treat unless you eat the stuff. Has it worked? No? Okay, give the treat first. Give the brownie first. See if that whets the appetite, literally. You just got to mix it up, guys. And, linear don't work. Linear is not your friend. It's like the most direct route. I like to say the most direct route is the indirect route with our TUI folks.
I love that. One of my mentors always said, why can't we have dessert first? And I actually don't know.
Because we've all been taught that way. We feel like you have to earn it. You got to earn it. Oh my gosh.
Right.
You know how hard we all are working every single day, right? That's a reframe. Maria, there's a reframe. They're working so hard. That kid that I used as my example, he worked so hard not to be destructive, disrespectful, whatever, right? Say to yourself, my kid is working really hard. I'm working really hard. What can I find to notice that I've done today? That's why I have parents look in the mirror and say, I've worked really hard today.
Great, wonderful. I've got 2 questions left. We're going to try and squeeze those in. For 2E, do you generally recommend a Dewey-style progressive or Quaker school instead of the Thorndike-style school?
So to answer that question, I would have to know what all those things are.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one.
I'm not. I'm not an educator. So what I recommend is the place where your kid thrives. What I recommend is for the kid who needs to move, that they get to move. I just was on a call with clients and the dad so clearly needed to move. Our session is 2 hours. And I was like, so if anyone out there, you know, it was just he and his wife, if anyone out there needs to get up and move and pace, I would love that. You know, like it has to be what really is the answer to that question. And thank you for asking that question. And now I'm going to have to go educate myself. And if you want to send me what I should read about it, do so at julie@withunderstandingcomescalm.com because I would love to. It's the culture. The culture matters. I have a severely dysgraphic child who freshman year of high school was an AP Gov, heavy writing, wrote, bored. Guess what? He loved the teacher so much. Math, science. He's like going to be a physics major in college. Math, science, tanked that year. Got a 5 on the AP Gov exam. Not that I care that he got a 5, but it's insane that he got it's all writing. He doesn't write, but he was so motivated by that teacher and he loved that teacher and he wanted to do it for that teacher. That's what motivated him. So it's the culture that matters.
Most definitely. Wonderful. We'll squeeze this last one in. My 2E son, who is 12, sleeps for 16 to 18 hours about once a week, missing 1 day of school every week. He's been tested for anything psychological and there's nothing. So wondering if this extreme fatigue is related to being 2E.
First of all, bravo. High five you, whoever you are, parent, for letting him sleep in. That's what he needs. What would happen if you didn't let him sleep in? Let's just pause for a minute and think about that. The other 4 days wouldn't work. So could it be, I don't know what triggers he's enduring. I don't know how hard he's working to not do things or to do things. It certainly begs the question if he's working hard, that's causing the extreme fatigue with a learning disability that isn't being addressed. You know, there are some stealth dyslexics who like somehow teach themselves to like memorize things. Mm-hmm. And there are some auditory processing folks who have to like override and it's exhausting. So he's coming home from school and he's like a mess. He's working really, really hard and it would be helpful to find out what's going on for him. So you might ask him. I certainly would want to talk with teachers and ask, does he seem to be working hard? Does he seem tired at school? You're right to think medically as well. So yes, it could be that he's just working so hard, he's mentally and emotionally exhausted. Yeah, but then we now need to consider the environment, whether that's an environment that's sustainable.
Like that. Oh, we've got the info in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There was one question, and I'm not quite sure what the question means. It says, what can you tell me about nonverbal learning disorder?
So, I mean, that is a whole area of different learning differences and learning disabilities that, you know, again, I am not a clinician. I'm an expert in 2E, and I have a lot of experience personally by raising my kids, as well as the advocacy that I do based on my law experience. As far as learning differences and learning disabilities, when a client comes to me and there is a learning difference or a learning disability that I can't address directly, I refer them to somebody. So the nonverbal learning disability, it's part of a constellation of learning differences that are very important for a parent to understand based on what their child is displaying and where their child is challenged. So I would encourage you to, this brings up actually a very good question. If you are seeking professionals to work with your gifted or 2E kid, you have to make sure that they understand gifted and 2E. In fact, when I'm working with parents on finding consultants, if I don't have somebody to refer them to, I recommend that their first question be, what is your experience with twice exceptional children? And if the professional goes, what's twice exceptional children? Then we know we move on. If they say, oh yeah, ADHD and gifted, we move on, but it's really important to make sure whoever, nonverbal learning disabilities, auditory process, all that stuff, it's different for gifted and 2E kids. There's a different layer. There's another layer that must be understood within the context. So I didn't exactly answer your question, but hopefully gave you a little bit of a direction, I hope.
Oh, I think so. Julie, just before I let you go, we share a bugbear, which is how gifted people are identified or framed. And as I talk about, it's the trials with my son, which led me to investigate who gets to be gifted. But you have a great system for how you explain being gifted with the frosting.
You remember the frosting, huh? All right, what Maria's referring to. Yeah, so what Maria's referring to is the 3-layer chocolate cake of giftedness. Now you can substitute your own flavor, no worries. I like mine chocolate, but you can make yours any flavor you want. The frosting is the ability, it's what people assume gifted means, right? If you went on the street, wherever you are, and you say, hey, next person who walks by me, what's gifted? They're gonna be smart, right? Potential, ability, right? That's the frosting piece. It's like this thin, it's above, around, between all the layers. And then you got 3 layers or 3 characteristics. And those are asynchronous development, perfectionism, the other side of which can be anxiety, and intensities, or what's known in gifted parlance as overexcitabilities. So that's a whole, I unpack all those terms with clients. You can certainly look on my website to read articles that I've written about it and blogs that I've written about it. But the idea is that understanding learning differences and learning disabilities, there's a lot written about that. It's pretty clear. You can talk to a professional about it, but gifted is so misunderstood. Right. So I tend to love the Columbus Group definition of gifted, which you can Google and see what it means. And then I've created this 3-layer cake, and it helps people unpack what it means. And it helps people advocate to whoever they need to advocate to, whether it's a babysitter or a teacher or a coach or a family member, to understand that asynchronous development, developing in those physical, intellectual, and emotional spheres at different trajectories and times, and that kids are dealing with that and grappling with that all day long, every minute of every day. That's a really important piece of understanding gifted. And that there's perfectionism and the fear of failure and imposter syndrome that can come with it. And that comes with anxiety very often, and what's known as gifted underachievement. And then overexcitabilities, which, if you don't know what overexcitabilities are, that's exciting to me, because that means you're new and you're starting to learn, because that's such a thing to understand in gifted land. And it's a term of art coined by Kazimierz Dabrowski, a psychologist, and it really talks about this way of coming into the world. It's really what that video I suggested watching with your kids that I recorded on my site, it's really about being this enormous antenna coming into the world and deriving great pleasure and potentially great pain from the input, the stimuli that you're getting from the world and that you give out to the world. That was the quickest thumbnail sketch of my 3-layer cake that I've ever given.
You are phenomenal, Julie. Thank you so much. You have given us so much today. And what I love most about it is that there is so much more that our viewers can then go and access. Thanks to all of your hard work. And thanks for what you're doing to educate people and also to support those people who are 2E, both as parents, as students, and as adults. I find it really interesting that a lot of adults don't discover that they're 2E until they have children. And then once those issues their children are having are brought to light, they realize, just like you said at the beginning, oh, he, she, it's just like me. Yeah, he, she, they, it's just like me. I was like that, didn't get the support. So now let me find ways to support my child.
And then myself. Right? You got to jump into that Facebook page with the adults. I mean, it is awesome, the interactions that are happening in there for lots of adults.
Most
aha moments.
Definitely. Here at Bridges, we talk about finding our tribe. So that is definitely what you need to do. You need to look for your tribe. And Julie has several Facebook pages where you may be able to find the tribe for you. I definitely recommend that you check out with understandingcomescalm.com, because that is definitely a hub to direct you to all of the things that you need. Once again, Julie, I cannot thank you enough. Just before I say goodbye, talking about resources and people being able to access them. At Bridges Academy, we now also have an online high school. So it's totally online. So you don't have to be in California for your child to attend. So if you have a 2E student of high school age, there's a wonderful opportunity tonight, Wednesday, November 17th, to attend our open house. So we're just dropping the details for that in the chat. Feel free to click on it. It will be at 5 p.m. Pacific. And so I'm sure you can work that out based on wherever you are. It has been wonderful. Julie, I tell you, you are the gold standard. And thank you again for leading the charge and making such a huge difference in the world of 2E.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. So, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our show today. Next month, we have with us another amazing person. We have our very own Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman. And so I know Julie adores him as much as I do. And so I hope that everybody will join us again next month. There is an exit poll. Please complete it for us, because it really is going to help us make sure that the conversations that we have in 2022 are about the things that you need to know. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the month. And I look forward to seeing you when I'm joined by Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman. So make sure that you join me.